Oh, right. So we got an 18 by 24 piece of hardboard that I gessoed, kind of with a nice kind of a buff tone, similar to my flesh tone, not quite as warm. Uh, since we did a little bit of a panoramic last week, pulled back, did a big, thought I'd do something more intimate. So this happens to be a house in the Douglas Preserve area of Santa Barbara. And I always like to try and look for things to look past. And so we've got this kind of almost abstracted brush with this kind of very organic tree shape and a very rigid piece of architecture that has a little bit of damp of light, which I'm actually going to play up a little bit behind. So let's get moving here. What do you say? Let's start with a vertical, and then we're going to go with that horizontal just in there, just to begin. It looks like the edge of it comes maybe over here. So this might even come over a little further. We're gonna get basically the windows in. Just want to kind of get the basic shapes. Don't worry about any of the detail right now. The top of that looks like it comes almost at the midpoint. So it's going to be about there. The windows are going to go about here. This is actually going to go up just a little higher. This comes down. We get some brush kind of cutting in here. Got some just interesting organic breakup of space kind of back behind. Then we've got, looks like a little bit of a bay window comes out right about here to, there's our bay window. There's the one window, a little smaller, a little bit of our perspective, not much. And these are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay. We're going to have one there. Get that other part of the window in. We're going to get this tree shape breaking it. I will go back and double check and make sure I have these things parallel. I do have a wooden yardstick here though, so if I need to kind of double check some of that stuff, I can. So we're going to come up here. And this part of the tree. And it's neat to use organic trees because you can move them around and change the shape if you need to for the sake of composition. Where architecture is architecture and it's got to be pretty firm. Probably I can move that whole tree over. Now that I look at it, I think that whole tree can probably come over about to here. About here. Which is okay. We'll move it. Shapes are what's important, guys. So as I paint this in, I will move things around if need be. A lot of brambles and stuff. I was asked, actually, Anna asked me, she says, how are you going to handle all this? And I says, well, it's kind of an abstract mess. And that's kind of how I'm going to handle it. It's a bunch of stuff to look past. Then we got a little bit of the roof line right there. And I think that's about enough to get started on. So with that in mind, I'm going to pick up one of my trusty little brushes here. Now remember, trees in front. This is in front, but it's really not hitting any of this. So I can actually start with that if I want. Normally I would never do it, but I'm going to this time. So I mixed up blue, green, ultramarine, a little sap, a little asphalt them together. I'm just going to kind of, and I want the brush to make some interesting marks. There's some more green because I want that underpainting, a lot of it to come through and work as part of the finish. And I have a lot of asphaltum in there, so I'm kind of adding more green here and there. It comes up by here, kind of scrub it. A little bit more green. A lot of that brown's coming through. Put a lot more terp into it. Get a little bit of a drip. With that terp, sometimes I can get more of the brush marks. A little bit more green. Just, I've got a nice tone down here, if nothing else. This is not going to dry that fast, so I can go back and get those marks working a little bit better. Although, because I am working on a piece of masonite, gesso masonite, it's going to dry faster than if I were working on canvas. So I'm just going to leave that alone for a little bit. Okay, going to kind of clean that brush a little, get rid of some of that crud around it. And I think I'm going to add some blue to that color and a little bit of just a little white, not much. There we go, right here. Get that this tone back here. About it's real thin paint, by the way. Right now I'm using, just so you know, nothing thick and gooey. That'll happen hopefully as we move along in the piece. Okay. This little greenery, we'll put that into. So I'm going to take some yellow. I actually have a little yellow laid out, some green, sap green, and maybe a touch of asphaltum, just to kind of mellow it a little bit, and we'll kind of get this. That's pretty good. It's not as warm as I wanted, so I'm going to throw a little bit of a. There we go. A little bit of that kind of greenery back in here, and there is a more of a raw sienna type color back behind it. We kind of want it to look scruffy. Don't want it to look neat or groomed. And that's why I'm kind of smushing this brush around in various directions to kind of get it. I'll tell you something I learned when I was a student in school is to make something look more refined. For instance, the house, you contrast it with pieces that are less refined, all right, which are pretty much all the organic types of foliage. So I'm staying with that basic concept, keeping this quite fresh, quite underdone. Just every time you see me take my brush away, what I'm doing is I'm varying those greens a little bit. So I'm not painting with that same green all the time. We'll probably leave it pretty much almost like that. Get a little bit more warmth up here at the top. For the warmth, I'm just mixed in a little bit of a raw sienna. Okay, we got enough laid in kind of around it where I can start in on the house itself, and I'm going to start with kind of that kind of beige, warm beige roof color. So I'm mixing a little asphaltum, a little white, little Naples, and just a touch of some sort of warm, in this case, alizarin. Nope, not quite. I want a little bit darker. Just want to make sure I don't get too colorful. That's good. It's a nice dry stroke. Ooh, I like that. Have a nice dry stroke up in here. comes all the way down to about there. I've mixed absolutely no medium into this paint, so it's very dry. Oh, let's see, about to here. I think I have it about the right height. Okay. All right. Gonna kind of clean that up a little bit. And we get into the top of the building, which is up here, the second story, just a little bit, it's behind. So I kind of want to block it in, and I'd use white and a little bit of Naples and a little bit of Turp. And pretty much we're just doing this. Just so you can kind of think of it as a placeholder. Now, if you notice, I went down too far in that one section and kind of destroyed the roof line, which is up here. So I want to make sure and get that back in. So I have that roof is consistent. And if I need to at the end, I will go through and neaten it up with a little bit of excuse me, I'm thinking as I'm painting, my yardstick. So I'm going to put a little dapple shadow on that roof. We've got a little bit going on right here. What I did is I just took the same color, I added some ultramarine blue to it to darken it and cool it. And if it goes too cold, then I just bring back some sort of a warm, either a brown or a red back into it. So if it goes too cold on me, goes too dark, I add a little bit of light. So what you're doing is judgment type stuff right up in here. So that looks pretty good. A little bit of I'm probably wondering what the heck I'm doing. And I'm painting all these underneath darks, shadows, so to speak. Okay, because it's underneath, it's below, it's not on top. So I'm going to bring stuff over it. Now I'm going to paint the white awning. First, I will paint the shadow of the white awning, which is going to be cooler. So what? Ultramarine, white, and that's almost a little too blue. It's got to be dark enough. So I'm just tempering that blue with a little bit of and I'm going to check it. I think I might be too dark. Yeah, a little too dark. I added a little bit of asphaltum into it so it didn't. The blue isn't screaming. It's a bluish cast, which is, again, I'm going to talk a little bit about the science of light here, and that is we have two light sources. We have our sunlight, and we have our skylight. Sunlight is warm and the skylight is cool. This is not receiving sunlight back in here. Therefore, it's cool. All right. Under the awning, it's hard for the skylight to kind of go down and under. So even though it's in shadow, it tends to be a warm shadow. So pretty much similar value, but a warm shadow. So what I can do while I'm messing with that blue, first of all, I would look to see, is there any other areas that have a little bit of blue in them? And there are right below this branch. So somewhere down in here, there's a little bit of a blue shadow. And there, some of these shadows down in here get a little blue, but they're not as dark. So, and they're kind of a violet kind of a blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take that color and I'm going to add some white to it to make it a little lighter. And I'm also going to add a little bit of alizarin to take it towards a violet. Now, one thing I want you guys all to be aware of, this is not white. That's closer to white. This is not white. So if I am close to the value of the board, I'm probably pretty good as far as the color that I'm going to want. If I see it go a little bluer at times, I'm going to do that. So we're going to get a little bit of that in first, right in here. And that's down right about here. Maybe a little bit more violet into it, meaning alizarin. And we're going to bring it over here. Bring it down. Bring it up. And then a little darker, not a lot, but a little darker on this part, because it moves away, changes direction. So it's a little bit darker right at this point. Whoops. I'm mixing too many of the other colors into it, so I'm having to keep remix. There we go. Not quite as dark, but we see it follow suit right in here. I'm going to go right in here. And up. I want to get enough variation in here to make it interesting, because there's a lot of subtle variations in the shadow tone. There's some that go warmer. I can see it go a little warmer, so I'm going to bring a little bit. I have a little cat orange hue. That made it real, and I'm going to add some white to that because I want it similar in value, and I'm going to go right in here and down here and work it over, and then it gets warmer still because I think the actual building itself slightly changes color, so it gets a little warmer as it goes up into this way. Well, not warm enough. Let's try it again. That feels better. You don't see it too much because it's almost the color of the board. As it goes down, so we're getting subtle variations in. It may look a little odd right now because nothing is kind of probably making sense, but it will. Hopefully. If it doesn't, I'm in big trouble. A little bit in here, here, down here, a little darker, down here, here. So now let's get under that awning that I talked about. So I'm going back to my raw sienna, which is quite a bit warmer. I think that may do it all by itself. Let's see. So it should be a little darker than the roof. So if I'm comparing values, I want to compare this value to the roof value. It's slightly darker. That's about right. You can push the warmth of it a little bit. I added a little bit more alizarin. So we're going to kind of indicate the shadow under the awning. If I need to, I will augment that shadow, meaning I will lighten it or darken it or warm it or cool it if I need to. So, but I want to start with something that I think is close, and that's where I'm at. This is pretty close. Add a little bit more dark because I see it get a little darker here as it works its way down, and then over and under here, a little darker. So there's a little bit more asphaltum in that color at this point. Even more, I added more. Maybe a little bit in here. What we want. Okay. All right. So if it isn't making sense to you, as of now, have no worries. I'm going to try and pull it all together. All right. Now, let's kind of get the darks in where those windows are. They're dark, they're kind of warm, so I'm going to start with asphaltum, a little blue. Keep it kind of loose, meaning not real dry, and we'll start right here, a little bluer. I can see it. Was a little bit too on the warm side. Not that it's going to make that big of a difference, but we're going to come right down here. And we're going to work our way all the way over here. See, it's a little too warm for me, for my taste. So I just went back and added some more blue. That feels a lot better to me. And up here, we'll get this window in. Okay. And the smaller window. Don't worry about the cross member in the window at this particular time. It's like, I know I've said this many times, but it's like in a plein air piece. There's the right time to go in and add certain elements, and there's the wrong time. And because what I mean by that is simply if you do it too soon, you may have wasted your efforts because you have to go back and wipe it out. So I like to kind of keep things much more vague in the beginning of the painting, and let it any sort of refinement happen more towards the end of the painting. Like spot there, and then we've got all this little rigmarole, this diamond stuff. I'm not going to get too precise about it right now. I don't want to. Just think it's the wrong time. So I want to make sure these are about right. This window should be a little lower. And if it's not, the only ones that are going to know it's wrong is you all, because you're watching. A little piece of a window back in here, which I would put in probably later, but we'll do it for right now. Just right there. Comes right down. All right. So we've kind of set up basically the building. And now what I'm doing is I'm double checking to see if I'm about where I want it. I think I want these windows a little higher. I just took about 2 steps back so that I can see. All right. So now we've got the basis. We're gonna put the lights in. I think before I even put the lights in, I'm gonna lay that tree in so I get the shape in. So what do? I want to go pretty darn dark, blue and asphalt them together, get enough turp so I can lay it in, and we'll go here and up. It's pretty thick at its trunk. A little more blue than I want, so I just threw more asphalt back into it. I'm going to throw a little alizarin, just add a little warmth to it to bring it forward. And I'm going to bring that from right here down. Okay, and then while we're at it, I added a little bit of oil to this paint just because I want it to be able to flow on top. So we're going to pick up this. Let's start with this. This is going to come from right here, and it's going to go this way off the page. And then we've got another one that works its way down here, and then over, and then down. And we've got another little branch that comes out here. We're going to leave it alone. We're going to work this so it's a little thicker at this point, and then this comes up here. Another little piece that comes out there. And not that you have to have everything in there, but I like the spatial breakup right now. So I want to be pretty true to the tree that I'm looking at. Now there's a lot of scrubby stuff back in there. We've got to get that in. We got a few branches that come in here. I think what I'm going to do right now is get a little bit of that sky in. White, ultramarine, and maybe a little Naples. A little more ultramarine. Whoops, too much. A little Naples. That looks pretty good. So we're going to pop some sky in here. Let's see, where do we see it? Right above this, a little sky hole right in there. Some sky. So this is just abstractly laying a lot of this information in and hopefully bringing it where it makes sense as we move towards completion. Okay, so what's happening is the whole piece is looking kind of like a really kind of mushed up image that you see in front of you. So let's go starting with some of the lights now. I'm going to switch over to a filbert. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up white, a little bit of Naples, so it's a slightly warm white, some solvent-free gel to loosen it up, maybe a little bit of linseed. And we're going to start,
Lynn would like to know if you have a favorite turp.
do I have a favorite? I use Gamsol. I'm sorry. I should actually refer to it as Gamsol and not Terp. Old school, so I call it Terp. Okay, so we got the light. That's light and that's shadow. So we've started to establish the concept of light and shadow. So the light is very strong right here. And it comes down here around the window, above the window. This is where you start to clean the window up. You know, you're going to mess the tree up a little bit. Kind of knew that. That's why I was not real crucial about exactly how I laid that tree in, because I knew I was going to mess it up. And in doing so, knew that I was going to have to come over it. Okay, so there's none up here. It's a little bit of white, a little bit more yellow to the white. So I added a little bit more Naples, right? Let's see, right in here. So nice and warm. It's a warm white. So I'm going to add a lot of Naples. A lot of Naples. Maybe even a touch of cat orange, huh? Yeah, let's try that. Let's try this. A little bit more. Whoa, that's probably more than I wanted, but let's see how it works. Little bit, but take a little ochre to that. Oof, too much. Didn't want to take quite that much. And right down here, maybe down here, I could soften that. That as it goes up, I can lean it more towards the yellow. Right here. And then as it goes into shadow, it gets, I see a lot of warmth in that shadow right there. This is where you get a lot of interesting variations, the warms to cools. So even though it's kind of shadowy, it has a little bit of a warmth to it right here. And right there, and let's see. I can take that same and use it for the vertical. Right here. Let's do that vertical in there. What do you say? Okay. And over here. Right there. Do it again. It's picking up the dirty paint. That's why you're getting that color variation. There we go. And there's a lot of little whites in there. I'm going to pick up the number 8 flat now and stay with the real yellowy white. Right here. And as it moves down, here, 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 over here. Now, the real white part is right here. So I went back and picked up the more pure white. It's still got a little yellow in it, but And probably had that in your way, I'm sorry. Okay, let's see. Oranger. Now it picks up, starts to get warmer. The sun isn't as hitting it as directly, and that's why it gets a little bit warmer over here. Do it again. Okay. I want to keep, I messed up on this. I want to keep that edge of that window right. So we're going to keep moving over. As we get over into here, it gets even warmer. So I went back with more of the orange. Go through that. And a little bit of that ochre. More right there. It's a little bit too warm. Picking up I'm dirtying up that warmth. I want that windowsill warm, but I had it way too warm. So we'll go with that. That feels okay. Let's kind of move this over here, and then let's take it back into the shadow. Right here. Whoops, more white. I had the color okay, the value was off. There, and a little bit more blue, and a little bit more white. And as it moves up here, that's probably too dark. Just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to use my trusty, I see a couple things I want to do first. I want to hit the underside of this little kind of bay window that sneaks out. So I'm going to hit the underside there. I'm going to bring it right in there. Okay. And I can emphasize the change in that, but I'm going to go down to my number 2 flat here, and I'm going to add a few little dark details in, because we want to get most of that house taken care of so I can get into the foliage, because the foliage is in front, so we don't want to do it until we get the house set up. Okay, that helps. If I'm doing a small plein air piece, I don't use things such as this, but if I'm painting in the studio, as I'm doing now, and I'm doing a piece about the scale, it's really helpful to use something to get your verticals and horizontals not looking too wavy, which is what I'm doing here. So we're gonna add a little bit of warm to that, and we'll put a couple of the little details, one there. And it goes down to, let's see where it's go down to. It goes down to about here. And then there's a second one that doesn't go down as far.
I would like to know what value range you're staying in.
Value range,
In the house.
with the exception of most of your painting occurs in the mid value range. Truthfully, it doesn't occur in the deep or the, unless you're doing a real low key painting. But in this case, it's, with the exception of all this foreground, everything is kind of middle to light. Okay, so a little bit of this window right here. Oh, too blue. It was cooler, and I put blue into it, but I went way too blue. It needs to be more neutral. Yeah, that's about right about there. Okay, and then we get a little bit on this side, just a little indication, and then it fades away. About here, and it fades. So starting to get some of the what a lot of people would think of as architectural detail. Not tremendously refined, but and then we're going to bring a warm, maybe a little bit more warm in it. Let's try it one more time. That's pretty good right there. Bring it down. I don't, it's a little bit off kilter. In other words, I think it needs to be straightened out a little bit like this. There we go. Now I need a little bit more of a gradation from this tone right in this area. So I'm going to just mix up kind of an ochre, white. Let's see what we got here. That's getting close. Although that makes this too dark. It really means that what I've got to do with that blue is lighten a little bit. Let's see, a little bit more. A little bit more. I think that's pretty close. Yeah. Because this is white trim. So it's got to be lighter than this color. And let's bring it over. And then let's get some of this trim right under the window. What do you say? Like right here. There. Comes out to here though. And then it shifts just a little bit. Gets a little lighter. So I just throw a touch more white into it. And it comes down here. And then it goes down into this window. There we go. So we got a little bit of a breakup in there. Looks pretty good. A little bit of a light right here. All right. So starting to shape up. I'm going to go back to my kind of slightly warm light. It's not real light. And I'm going to see if I can get a couple of these. I want to get one in here and one here. And I want to get one here and one here. Right? So with that in mind, put this up. One. It's probably a little thin. Probably a little bit timid there. Do it one more time. Every time I paint on top of that brown, there, it's a little thicker. Every time I paint on top of that brown, I pick that brown up and mix it into the color that I'm depositing. So I try and make the tone I'm putting down, more wet. That's a little better. And we'll do two here. No, got to do it again. Try it again. Okay, let's try this. I didn't like the text, the viscosity of the paint. One and come back. And two. Okay. And we can do the cross beams in a little bit. I want to get a little bit more gradation in this tone right here as it moves into the light. So it's a little bit more of a gradated tone. That feels better. Okay. Let's go with the lighter light, more of the whiter yellow. And we're going to put some lights back in here because we're getting a little light right here. Right there. And we're getting a little light right there, and a little on the outside, right here. As soon as I started picking up with their color, I went back and remixed. Bring this out, a little out there, a little jump. We got that. We want to get a little bit of dappled light, which is, this is a kind of fun stuff to do. Sometimes I save this for the end, but I'm going to do it now. Get a little bit of light happening right on the inside. You see that we also have, which I didn't put in, but I'm going to do it right now, a little bit darker, a little bit bluer, but we're seeing the inside windows. Now I can be real accurate and put them all in perfectly, or I can just kind of eyeball them, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to eyeball it. 1, 2, 3. Just going to flip it over. 4. There's a couple that run together, so we're just going to do 2 real, like 1, and then 1 right next to it. I don't care if they skip a little because they're inside anyway, and I want them to kind of be hidden back there. So to me, it really doesn't matter if they're exactly right. I do see a little bit of a light happening right here. Okay, and a little bit back in here. This is why I kind of left some of this stuff. There's some little light fractures that are happening back in here, back here. A little bit of a bright light happening down here. There's a red chair in there. Oh, I'm catching all kinds of fun little things now. There's light hitting on the post right here, a little bit here, not as bright, a little bit right in here. Bring it up a little bit. Lose that. Okay, now, pretty light right there on the architecture. It's right on that part of the window. Now on the other part of the window, it gets more of that kind of orange glow right about there. All right, now I haven't put the cross beams in. Let's do that right now. I've got to keep an eye on my time. I'm okay, I'm about halfway into it. Maybe a little behind where I'd like to be, but I'm not real far off. So we're going to find the middle of this, which is right about here. We're going to put 1 there, put 1 there, and put 1 there. So the middle is going to go right here. All right. And if I'm off, I'm off. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And we're going to put 1 here. Okay. And 1 at the bottom right here. Well, they're a little off, but I'm going to live with it anyway. I'm not going to try and correct it. I'm going to put a nice light right in here. Should be lighter. All right, I'm going to put a little bit more light right here. And then the mid of that, there's a little flower pot in the window. We need something there. There's some dark interior. So it feels like we're looking into the house a little bit. Now, one of the things that we're going to do as we get further along is I'm going to actually amplify, if I can. I don't like this brush. I stay with my little, this little brush. We'll get some dappled light literally right here. Whoa. One. I shouldn't even be using this. Let's just freehand it. Two. Come on. Let's do it again. One. A little bit here. Okay, so we're getting kind of the feeling of some of that dappled light. All right, let's kind of move it over here a little bit because we got to get into some other areas. Big piece of light right here, a couple back in here. We want to gradate. We want this gradation to work its way up, work its way over. Any of the light that I saw there, I might see a little bit right here. Oh, whoops. See, I want that to be light. I've got to be very careful that it doesn't come out too dark. There, that works. That works. So we're getting a feeling of some of that light going on. I'm going to soften some of this stuff, and I'm going to bring that up a little bit. Bring a little bit of light there, a little bit of light right here. A little light right there. Okay, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave this for a little bit because I've got to move on to some other areas. Oh, I do want to hit one other area, and I'm going to pick up my liner for that, I think. And I'm going to stay with the real light brush or real light color. Okay. We're going to take it from here down there. And right there. And with my liner, we'll come in and we'll do the little right. Paint wasn't wet enough. You saw what happened. I got a little bit of a stroke down and then it just disappeared. One there. And we'll bring one back that way. And then a couple of other little architectural. One there. And one there. Okay. And a little bit right there. Flower pot. A little something else over in here. A little color in that flower pot. Okay, a little red, a little orange, a little. And a little bit right. There's another little flower right in there. And there's a red pot. As long as I've got the red on the brush right there. Chair on the interior, which I didn't get. So I'm just going to pop it in there, and I'll pull this light back over it. Okay. So keep moving. I'm going to need to put a little bit of architectural detail into some of the other house, some kind of just a few linear snaps, like on the outside of this windowsill. And it works its way down. Right here, get a little bit of movement, and it comes, not enough. I was hoping this paint was going to set up a little faster, so I wasn't going to have as much trouble, but it seems to be staying pretty wet. Okay. I'm going to pop the light stronger over here. Just going to use as a maul stick. Just not getting it light enough. Okay. We got the bottom of that. We want to emphasize the change here a little bit more. Geez, it's just not getting dark enough. There we go. Let's make it too dark and then soften it. Okay. A bit of a snap right there. Let me see if there's anything else I want to get up in here. Now, as that shadow up there comes down, it lightens slightly, meaning this, just a little bit, and lightens and cools. Nope, not enough. Okay. So we're getting kind of some pretty colors happening back in the house. So we're going to need to start to pull it all together and then add, I think maybe I'll do some of this line work right now so I don't have to mess the tree up at the very end. So I'm going to mix up very, very wet, kind of a gray, a little bit of a warm gray. And we're going to come in with just a little bit of architectural emphasis, like right. Nope, not enough. I thought I had it dark enough. Let's try that one more time. I don't know if you guys can see that, because I'm maybe blocking your view, but and we want to get a little bit. God, it's still not getting dark enough. Isn't that amazing? It's because I'm painting into all this wet paint. There we go. A little bit of indication of what's going on. I see something I completely messed up on, that this needs to come over eventually here. Okay. And I can see that I can actually lighten up, and then we're going to start in on some of this foliage in a second. Over in here, I can go a little cooler and lighter. Oh, I like that. That's going to work. And I'm going to go a little lighter and add a little bit of alizarin to that color. A little more than I wanted. Keep forgetting how intense alizarin can get. Okay. So I started in some of that architectural detail. Maybe I can add just a touch more here and there. I can see right there. I can see under here. I can add a little bit of a drawing. Okay. Do I need any more lines? Maybe a couple, just to give it a little bit of a, so it isn't just in one spot. It's got a little character here and there, maybe a little bit here, a little bit up above, down below, maybe a hint or two in here, huh? Not too much. Better to underdo than overdo. One last thing is, as this moves over here, this is going to sit behind stuff, so it's not going to be tremendously important. All right, now let's get into on that tree. We got about just about 35 minutes to get the tree and foliage in. So I'm going to go back to my big old sloppy brush as soon as I find it.
So Aurel has a question.
Yeah.
When you're in the heat of the moment trying to finish your piece, do you have any tips on?
Do we have what?
Any tips on how to do a once over list of things to look for at the finish, and how do you remember them?
I don't have a list. What I do is I step back. The key is get back, look at it from a distance, and decide what's bothering you. What can I do? Are there things I can simplify? Because very often it's not the detail, it's not adding, it's a lot of times it's subtracting, it's getting rid of stuff. Initially, you'll always want to put in everything, and that's why plein air is so really such a great practice, because it's just impossible. You can't put in everything. So I think it's one of the best disciplines there is. I probably learned more from that than I have doing almost anything else, is just going out on location, doing something, and figuring out ways that I can make something look finished without it being finished. And that's how I discovered using this little brush, is because I can't do it all. And so if I can get my brush, once again, if you can learn how to let that brush do the work for you, you're better off than you sitting there and really laboring over all of these, little areas that you feel you need to get in there. Chances are you don't need to. And so, these weird time limits sometimes that you give yourself forces you to edit. That's when I came up with this whole quick studies approach that I did years and years ago. It was for that reason. It was to get people to edit, to get students not to put in everything, and learn how to deal more with indication. So you paint the feeling, you don't paint the detail. So standing back, mask wise, it's looking okay. Some of those darks that I've just laid in feel like a little too safe. That's a little better. Sometimes people are afraid to mess up what they've already done. And I'm one of those. But time makes you realize that you can't paint. I can't paint these leaves. I can't even see them as leaves. So what you have to do is you have to figure out, how can I make it feel like that without painting every little twig and every little leaf? And that's pretty much what you're doing as you progress through your painting. So I'm going to switch to a different brush in a little bit just because I want different kinds of strokes. So you can see why we kind of wanted to put in some of that stuff underneath. Because could you imagine trying to paint it in around the leaves? The answer is no. I'm going to grab a filbert, big filbert here, or eggbird, excuse me. Well, an eggbird is a filbert. It's just a long handle filbert. And put a lot of juice into it, a lot of chirp, a lot of medium, because I just want the paint. I'm just kind of twisting that brush a lot. One of the things I usually just say, go ahead and mess up and then paint back into it. So this can be a real tedious part of your painting, to do all this kind of stuff and make it feel natural. I want to bring it down around in here. I want to get the overlap, because that's, remember what I said when I first started this, one of the things that I look for are things that you can look past. That's the whole idea. We're looking past all of this tree. Little blobs of it in here and there. Let's keep moving that stuff. Break over some of the lights, because little too, I gotta kill more of that space. I need twigs in here too, by the way. So what I can do is take my eggbird, or my liner, and draw a few twigs. And some of that I can do with a knife, and I might at the very end. It's a big, I noticed there's a huge thick branch, and I want it pretty much as dark as I can get it, right about here. And there's another one right about here. So I'm just using blue and brown together, and that's a big tree limb. So I really need a bigger brush to do that with. So I grab my number 8 flat, grab the blue and the brown together, some chirp, some medium, and if I go from here over and then thicken that down to about there, I can give the feeling of that, at least that part of that. There's a lot of darker foliage down in here. And there is more sky color. Right in there. So let's go in here. Let's do a few more little twigs, because I don't have enough of them. There's a lot of them in here. I'm going to bring one from right. That's too thick, but no one's going to care. And we'll take one from here. bring it up. So get this, all this overlapping. I'm not going to put them all in. I'm just going to put the ones in that I think are going to help the most. So we're going to take, got a nice big one coming this way down, breaks right down here. And another one that breaks right. So what we're trying to do is get the feeling of all this activity. Remember, I use that word a lot, activity. Put more foliage in, constantly. Foliage versus twigs, all of it quite organic. Nice big coming right off the edge. We're going to bring it down in here. Bring another one up here, up. Got a lot. One of the things when you use a brush, the weight of the brush, you can get real thick and thin, and sometimes it isn't necessarily what you're after. And so it can be a real detriment. So that's why sometimes it's really nice to switch off and use a knife, which I think I'm going to do in just a second. In fact, let's try it right now and see if I can have any luck with it. Try to find a good knife with a good edge. This looks pretty good right here. Let's see what I can do with this. I can put some foliage in with it too. Maybe get kind of some different character. I don't like it as much, but with that, that's pretty good. Some of the bigger leaves, you can kind of particularize them a little bit. That I see a really nice. Where's my egg? There it is. I'm gonna start. Okay, blue, brown, green, medium. Let's go in and get some darks back in on this. So all this underpainting begins to feel like brush. It's way too heavy-handed, but beggars can't be choosers right now. I got to kind of keep moving. more foliage, more twigs, lots and lots of twigs. The more time I had, probably the more I'd put into the laying twigs in. But because we don't have a lot of time, I'll just get the basic movement of twigs. There's going to be some lighter, they're going to overlap the tree, which is kind of nice too. Get some light ones kind of coming in, sneaking in there, down here. There's one that kind of comes up here. Another one comes across. That's pretty good. We'll get a little bit, another one maybe down in here. One or two breaking across this way, breaking up here. And working their way into the see here. What else we got here? A few little kind of coming this way. Okay, let's go for a little more of the chaos in here. What do we got? Yeah, got a little bit of time. I'm probably working a little too frantic right now. Probably could slow down a little bit and be a little bit more accurate. Wouldn't hurt. Now it's drying up enough. Good. Finally. There was something I noticed earlier too. I'm going to get that. There's a little bit of a brick, kind of a walkway down here. Looks like it's a flower pot there too. Son of a gun. I didn't see that earlier. I kind of like that. That's right here. Oops. That's sure ugly. Let's do it again. Now we want to be a little more careful. It's dense to bottom. Okay. Now let's overlap some foliage over that because let's go back in here, get some of this to work. And there's some little greens and colors peeking through. There's a wonderful little worm peeking through down in here. So I can figure that out. It's kind of, and it takes away from some of the denseness of a lot of this. So there's 4 of these. I don't like the 4. It looks like it was something, but I like the idea of something coming up and breaking right about here. See, I kind of like that. That helps. This bothers me a little bit. There's a little bit of a crisscross there, which is okay, but I think I need to bring a few more. Now you see why I wanted to get some of the line work done in this in the architecture before I went in and did, because you can't get it in after. That's why I brought up the fact that you need to get things in at the right time, because if I want to put, I can't do line work back in here. I could do a little in here if I wanted to. I could like come in and let's say I'm going to add a little bit right here, just to add right about here. Provided areas. Maybe down here. To add any architectural types of detail that I think I need. It's always best when you're going to paint a tree or a bunch of stuff on top of it. It's always best to get that in prior to anything else you might be doing. Just because you can, as you can see, it's almost, like I said, it's almost impossible to go back now and add any of that in behind the tree. I can do it in these open spaces, but I can't do it behind the tree. I mean, it's just, I have to wipe the tree out and do it and then come back. This is really getting picky here to make it feel like it's an interior of the house. I don't like, I'm going to go really white here. I've got the time. Got about just a little over 10 minutes here. So I'm going to see if I can come in and clean some of this stuff up now. Hopefully. Boy, what a difference with that brush. That liner's making all the difference, but also I've got the medium nice and moist so that I should be able to come in with a light touch and really illuminate. And let's see, there's a little indentation here I want to get. That comes down, that comes down. I'm just looking at all, if there's anything else I need to add in there. I'm going to look at the, down here, there's some nice little greens. So I'm taking some sap, some maples, little ochre, little yellow, and let's see what we can do. A little more sap. And I'm going to mix a little brown into it, darken it, just kind of scuff. And let's take I want to do some real subtle okay, let's see. Let's get a little bit light on that. A few little light twigs as I look up to the left. Look at the upper left. I really haven't paid any attention to that area, but a few little breaks over all this dark mass is going to help. It's layering. So we're painting what's behind first and what's on top second. Got to keep it very loose. your paint. Your paint cannot get thick and dry. It's gotta be, because we're painting on top of a lot of really thick stuff here. And it's gonna mix from time to time. It doesn't really matter. Let it. So I'm going to take a quick look. We got about 6 minutes left. I'm going to get that to pop a little bit more. Just bringing more yellow into my green, a little bit lighter. Let's see what we can get here. I kind of like that. It's too small of a brush, but pick with too small of a brush, sometimes it just starts to really get kind of that overworked quality. So I got to be careful. Just use a brush pretty free and abbreviated. Okay, that helped. It needed that to begin to pop it. So now I kind of want to look at detail. I just feel upon looking at this piece that I need to kind of slow down and get a little bit more accurate detail in here. Number one, I want to paint the shadow side of that. And it comes down actually here, as that does there. Now, any lights that I want to pop at the last minute. I'm going with my lightest light, white, Naples, medium. Now that tone fades into a little bit of a warm. And then eventually, whoops, eventually gets that warm. Come on, missing it. I'm missing it. There we go. It still isn't doing it. You have to kind of, I got to keep my colors separate because they're starting to mush together here, and it's kind of getting all cruddy up here. Because I'm trying to get the movement of color in the shadows. It's like it doesn't stay one clean color. Okay, I see a couple of little things as I was just making those marks. I liked a couple of twigs that I want to kind of bring over this. One there. One there. I'm going to look up in here, see if there's any. I may want to hit some negatives now. I haven't taken any time to hit negatives, meaning areas between. And sometimes a little bit of that, you got to be careful not to do a whole bunch, but a little bit of it can really add something to the piece. So I'm kind of taking kind of the concept of the roof color. and just here and there. Just to break it up a little bit here. Little, when it gets too dense, you just go back and break it up. Depending on how much time you have, you could break it up for 10 minutes, you could break it up for 2 hours. And if you start breaking it up too much, you do the exact opposite. You go back and you start adding in more foliage. And it's a concept of tree holes. You paint both directions. You paint positives and you paint negatives. You don't only paint one direction. And as it goes back, it isn't quite as white, but we do get some whites back breaking in here. I don't know why the heck I did that. Just stupidity. It happens. It's starting to feel right. Let's put it that way. I don't know. I know that this is one area that I could add more and more into if I really wanted to get it really working. Just by adding a little bit of that, then overlapping it with foliage and such coming across it will give it the density. Now, some of the stuff I'm just doing without even looking at what I'm painting. I'm just doing it because I think it needs it on the painting itself. So at some point, you want to kind of divorce yourself a little bit from the image in front of you and look at the painting itself and see if there are problems that you can see that you might be able to add something to fix. I want to get the feeling of it being busy enough without it being, what's the word? Picky, without it looking picky. And that's actually a very hard thing to do. It's not I mean, it sounds, oh yeah, simple. I conceptually, most everybody will understand exactly what I'm talking about. But to actually do it and make it feel natural and not like you just drew every little thing into it, that gets to be something that is not as easy as it sounds. One of the things that I have found is overlapping, particularly when you're dealing with the illusion of realism. Overlapping is really an important thing. You need enough overlapping for it to feel like there's dimension. That's basically what you see me fussing with now, is overlapping. switched over to a different brush because I didn't like some of the characteristics I was getting with it one. So, and one of the things you can do when you paint foliage too is don't stay with one brush. You know, it depends upon how long you have to work, obviously, but you know, switch off, use a couple different brushes because they're going to give you different types of marks. And I think it's an important factor is that your marks don't all feel the same. See more light back in that window there. Any back here, one there, a little bit here. So, you know, I call this thing the house in the woods. It's actually the house in Douglas Preserve, Santa Barbara. I never painted the house while I was there. I painted a lot of the trees, and I think I did a piece earlier in the live painting sessions where I actually did a landscape from there, but haven't really painted the house. And so this is my first crack at painting the house, which is kind of fun. And I could see where I could kind of go back and fuss here and there. Just mixing it in with the green right now. I'm gonna step back, take a peek at this thing from back. It works. One of my goals in this was to amplify the depth of light more than it is, because I see it. And when I see it as potential. I don't necessarily see it exactly the way that I've painted it. So when I did paint it, I tried to pronounce it a little bit more and get it to stand out. Just trying to do a little color variation in here. Standing back, it's pretty effective. I think I could be a little cleaner in some of my modeling up in, I hate to use clean brush and do this, but I'm going to soften some edges here. And then we'll call it quits because we're just about there. So hopefully it clarified a few things about different types of painting. I think next week I'm due for a figure. So we're going to do something with a figure next week. I haven't decided what exactly, but we'll figure something out. In the meantime, I hope you all do some painting and have fun doing it, because that's why we're doing this. We're not doing this to make ourselves crazy, although sometimes I know it feels like it because it isn't coming out the way you want it. But always keep in mind, you're doing this because it's fun, and continue to have fun. I think it's probably the most important thing I could tell you is enjoy it. Enjoy the process. Enjoy learning. Enjoy improving. And you're going to take 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. It's just the way it goes. So everyone is going to come out better. As you've probably seen, even in these plein air demos, they all aren't jewels. Some are better than others. You know, they're all fun. I must admit, I enjoy painting. Don't always enjoy the paintings that I've completed, but I always enjoy the process of doing the painting. So that's kind of what I want you guys to all take away from this. In any event, that's about where we're going to leave it right now. Okay, happy painting, everybody.